Welcome to our webinar, Hot or Cold, Figuring Out Involvement for Your Student. My name is Christine Self, Director for Family Outreach and Engagement with Parent and Family Relations, and I'll serve as the moderator for today's session. With us today are Preethi Kasalingam, Administrator in the Center for Campus Life, and Brad Mayer, a member of the Parent and Family Relations think tank. We are very excited to have all of you joining us today. As a reminder, we are conducting this session as a webinar. You should be able to see and hear us, but we cannot see or hear you. You do have the ability to ask questions using the Q&A feature. You should see that feature at the bottom of your screen. We will work behind the scenes throughout the webinar to answer some of your questions, and there will also be a little bit of time for us to address questions at the end of the session. We are recording this session and posting it to our website so that you'll be able to review it again later or share it with others. I will also email the recording link to those of you who registered using the same email address that you used to register for the webinar. Today's webinar is focused on helping support your Red Raiders involvement on campus. In a recent survey of family members, we saw that student involvement was a top priority for families. So we put together this webinar to share how your Red Raider can pursue meaningful involvement opportunities and how you can encourage them to get involved. At this time, I will turn it over to Preethi.
Thank you, Dr. Self. As she mentioned, my name is Preethi Kasalingam, and I am the current administrator for the Center for Campus Life. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a member of one organization myself. So I understand what it's like to be involved in a student organization as well. So college is a time of discovery. So many people describe college as a time of self-discovery. For many students, it is the first time that they're on their own and away from their parents. So they're kind of figuring out who they are and how to express themselves. So while this time can be great, it can also be very frustrating as well. So just remember that this process looks different for each person, and it's the same with involvement. So what works for one student might not work for the next student, but it is their own individual process. You as a parent can help them get involved, but whether or not they decide to is their decision ultimately. Being a part of a student organization is the best way we know how to get involved, but it isn't the only way. So basically, there are many ways to get involved, and it is everyone's individual process. So just like how I mentioned that involvement and discovery looks different for each person, there are also several variables that could affect a student's involvement. So age is one. An 18-year-old's involvement will look different than a 22-year-old's involvement. And even during their time in college, their involvement will change a lot. So typically, the younger students hold member roles in organizations, whereas the older students will hold more leadership roles because they have experience in the organization or they're used to it. And so that is a change in involvement because typically officers have more responsibilities and duties, and they're spending more time on their organization. So age is definitely an indication of involvement. Gender and sexuality can affect a student's involvement because it's about where they feel seen, heard, and most importantly, safe. Next one is comfort. So your student may join an organization and realize that they might not be exactly comfortable in that organization. And, that's okay. We have over 550 organizations here on campus. So there's a lot of options. Just because they join one organization right at the beginning doesn't necessarily mean that they have to stay if they're uncomfortable in that organization. Communication style. So are they introverted or extroverted? Sometimes that affects how they communicate with people or how they join groups. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then also, majors and minors. So some programs expect a lot of commitment from their students. So this might also affect their involvement. Every major and every study is hard in its own way, but certain majors and minors might suggest that students take study abroad opportunities or do some sort of community service. And so that takes away their time to be involved in student organizations or be involved with Texas Tech as a whole. And then of course, responsibilities. Some students have a job or multiple because college is expensive and you got to pay for it somehow. And so this also takes away their time and energy to be involved. They might feel burnt out from, having a job, being in classes, and being part of an organization. So that's just a lot of commitments in general. And that might be too much for a specific student. And I mean, that's just a lot in general. And then finances. So some organizations have like membership dues, fees, and things like that. So this might vary from hundreds of dollars per semester to, $20 per the entire year. There are plenty of organizations that don't have fees. And so it just depends on what the student is willing to pay or not pay. And it could also be the decision of whether or not they join organization A over organization B. And then of course, race or ethnicity. So much like gender and sexuality, it's just up to the student's level of comfort and general safeness. So college involvement is very different. So college in general is a bigger environment than students are used to. So even though I graduated in a class of 850 in high school, nothing could quite prepare me for the size of college. So if your student was super involved in high school, then that's great. They might have an idea of what organizations they want to join. It's very common for typical organizations that they joined in high school to have something similar in college. But also, if they aren't jumping at the chance to get involved right away, it could also just mean that they are intimidated or that they are just figuring out college in general. First year students are going through a lot of change, so involvement might not be at their top top priority. If your student is transferring from another university, they're probably also still figuring things out at their new university or their new space in general. While Tech has over 550 organizations, it is very possible that the same organization that they were part of at their previous institution isn't at Tech. Or that the organization that they were a part of at their previous institution is different at Texas Tech. So they might find that while they were part of the science organization at their previous university, and they joined the one here, it might not be the same. They might not like how it's run. And so they might not join. And so that could be a reason. And just because there's like national chapters and things like that at every university doesn't necessarily mean that each organization is going to be the same, even though they all have the same set of general rules and things like that. It's just sometimes it can be based off of the city that they're in or just the culture of the university in general. So, there are many benefits to involvement. In general, students who are more involved have a better satisfaction with their college experience. So if you think about it, these students, they're going to remember the events that they attended and the things that they did with their organization. And hopefully these are positive and fond memories. And so when they look back at their time in college and they look back at their time at Texas Tech, they will remember those memories and hopefully they're happy thoughts. Organizations are a great way to meet new people. These connections can lead to lifelong friendships, job opportunities, study buddies, and so much more. My involvement in college has awarded me letters of recommendations, leadership opportunities, and several friends who I have stood by in their own weddings and hopefully will stand by me in mine someday. And then also just, growth. So growing as a person. So growth sometimes means pushing your own boundaries and getting out of one's comfort zone. So it can be uncomfortable, but that's okay. Of course, one should do that within reason and not harm themselves or anyone else. Sometimes it's good to be uncomfortable because that means that you're trying something new, but it should always be within reason and it should never be unsafe to anyone or especially yourself or themselves. So, and then also students learn skills that not only help them in their careers, but also in their day-to-day life. So they'll learn things like professionalism, problem solving, working with others, overcoming challenges, and conflict resolution. But again, these are just a few examples of the many skills that they'll learn in their time as a member in an organization. So we're moving on to the star of the show, the organizations themselves. So at Texas Tech, as I mentioned before a few times, we have over 550 student organizations. So these organizations are divided into 4 categories. You have your fraternities and sororities. So this is the most common or traditional form of a student organization. And that's typically what people think of when they think of student organizations or student groups. We have 59 active fraternities and sororities, and they are divided into 4 councils. So those 4 councils are the Panhellenic Council, the Interfraternity Council, the Multicultural Greek Council, and the National Panhellenic Council. And then we have our general student organizations, which take up a majority of the 550 plus orgs. And these organizations can vary, as you can see, some of the categories that are common categories that we see are religion, politics, food, culture, department or school, hobbies, and honor societies. And then moving on to sports clubs, we have 29 active sports clubs. So these clubs are recognized by the rec, and they are able to practice and will oftentimes compete against other schools. So this is slightly different from intramural sports in the way that intramural sports, they compete within the university. So for example, intramural basketball, they'll compete against other basketball teams within the university, whereas club basketball, they'll compete against other club basketball teams from other universities. But both are funded by the rec. So then we move on to our new organization. So new orgs are less than a year old. They are our baby organizations. So we help students throughout the process of starting a new organization. So if that is something that your student is interested in, please have them reach out to us. We help them through every process, or we help them through every step of the process, and it's fairly an easy process too. So just a general rule of thumb, we advise students to join at least 2 organizations. So one organization just for fun where they can kind of let loose and relax a little bit, and then one related to their major to help them with their studies. We want them to have a balance because, college is about balance, but they'll kind of learn to figure that out when they get here. And then if your student doesn't know what they want to study yet, that's also fine. And then if your student hasn't joined an organization yet, that is also fine. So if your student is undecided and unsure of what they want to study or major in, a great way to kind of get introduced to it is by joining an organization. So let's say they are deciding between psychology and forensic science. My advice would be them joining both the psychology organization and the forensic science organization, and kind of ask questions. So again, this is one of the benefits of joining an organization, and it's having a community to ask those questions. So more than likely, if they are a first year student, there will be a student who has been part of the psychology program or the forensic science program for 3 to 4 years. And so they can answer questions of, which professors to take, kind of how to get internships, what are they kind of, expect, what should they expect from these programs. And so it's really good to kind of, again, have that community to use as a resource. And then if your student hasn't joined an organization yet, there's no need to worry. Like I mentioned before, involvement takes time, and it's really just them having to go through that process. So general questions to ask. So these are just a few of the questions. So some students are more comfortable in smaller settings rather than big groups. So that's where that are they introverted or extroverted question will come into play. So if that is the case, so they can look at how big an organization is and reach out to ask about their events. So there are many questions that you can ask. Your student may need to do more research on the organizations that they are wanting to join to see if it's the right fit for them. There is nothing wrong with doing research. In fact, we highly encourage it. Making educated decisions for yourself is a skill that many students learn in college, and figuring out which student organization is good for them is a great place to start. Again, no one knows them as well as they do. So if they have questions about organizations, they can reach out to us. However, which organizations they should join and things like that is entirely up to them. So last piece of advice for you and your students is don't rush it. If you have an eager student, that is great. But it is also best to kind of slow down and reevaluate. So do they really want to join 5 organizations within their first semester of college? Do they want to be part of 5 organizations in general? So definitely encourage them to think long-term like that, because joining 5 organizations is a lot. It's a big time commitment, and it's just better to kind of think about how that'll affect them, in maybe a few months from now when they're settling in and, colleges or their classes are starting to really pick up. It's also normal if they aren't wanting to join a student org yet. They could just be navigating a new environment or getting used to their class load. So, that is definitely a big shock. And we talked about that a little earlier as well. Joining a student organization isn't the only way to get involved at Tech. So if they have another way of getting involved, then that's great. At the end of the day, we just want our students to have the best experiences during their time at Tech. And if that means they're involved somehow, in some other way besides student organizations, then that's great. And then lastly, they are at Texas Tech to learn and get those degrees. Involvement is great, but it also requires time. So sometimes that extra time might be causing them, stress, or just not allowing them to be students first. If that is the case, it might be time to step away and kind of focus on their studies. And that is a very mature decision to make, and I mean, I really applaud them for doing that. I struggle with that as a professional. I know several of my friends struggle with that even today. So, learning how to be an advocate for yourself and standing up and saying, I need to take time away, is a really mature decision and a very difficult decision to make as well. So these are some frequently asked questions. So what is the best way to get connected or join an organization? So at Texas Tech, we use a website called Tech Connect. So the system is, sorry, I already said this. We use a system, and all they really need to do to sign in is use their e-rater credentials. So once they are logged in, they can search for an organization and events based off of, their interest, hobbies, majors, and minors. And then they can join an organization through their Tech Connect page, which is a really neat function. And then they can also contact them using the information located on that page. And they can even find out their social media information and reach out to them that way. Tech Connect is a super neat tool and it's very user friendly. And then social media is also our friend. So if an organization has social media, it is a great way to get a look into their organization and kind of see what they're about. The next question is, what if there isn't an organization my student wants to join? So, good news is that they can always create their own. So they can reach out to us about starting an organization and we help them with that process, or they can look at our website for information on how to create an org. Again, it's a pretty simple process and we help them throughout it. We've had some really fun organizations be created this year. We had a Taco Tuesday Club, a Ferret Society. And so it's as an administrator, it's really neat to kind of see all of the creative ways that students can make new organizations, but also, gather with people that share the same interests as them. And so I will always think that that's the coolest thing about student orgs. The next question is there a deadline to join an organization? So it really just depends on the org. Some organizations will have, strict joining periods. But, many organizations kind of just have open enrollment. And then it's also very common for organizations to have kind of 2 periods of enrollment. So one in the fall and then one in the spring. And then again, have your student do some research and contact someone in that organization for more information on dates. We don't have information on each individual organization's joining dates or things like that because that type of information changes a lot. So I highly recommend that they reach out to someone in that organization and ask those important questions or whatever questions they may have. And then the final question is, my student isn't being treated well in their organization, and I think there might be some hazing going on. What do I do? So Texas Tech has a zero tolerance policy regarding hazing, and hazing is a violation of Texas state law. So if you believe that your student is experiencing hazing, please have them contact us and or submit a hazing report immediately. If they don't want to report it, then you can also contact our office and we will investigate it immediately because student safety is our top priority. Again, I cannot stress enough, if you think that your student is being bullied or hazed, please encourage them to contact us or file a report. However, that is also based on their level of comfort. So if they don't feel comfortable filing that report or contacting us, then you are more than, you can 100% contact us and we will do our best to investigate it immediately. We can't investigate something if we aren't aware about it. We aren't aware of it. So yes, again, please reach out to us or have your student reach out to us. And then this is just some general contact info. And if you are wanting to see some more information about our student organizations, then I highly encourage you to check out our social media pages because we have a lot of fun content on there. But thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Preeti. Next, we're going to hear from our Parent and Family Relations Think Tank member, Brad Mayer, who's going to share some information on how his students have been involved at Texas Tech.
Thanks, Christine, and I appreciate the chance to visit with everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. So just a little background on me. My wife and I have had 3 of our children all go to Texas Tech. So the first one, our oldest son, started in 2013, graduated in 2017. Our daughter began in 2016, graduated in 2019, and then our youngest son started in 2018, and he will graduate in May. So I've really had a lot of different experiences with our kids, and just kind of wanted to highlight some of those because, as Preeti said, there are just so many different things that they can do, and every one of our children did something differently. So my oldest son, he had played basketball all through high school, was not good enough to play in college, but had a chance to be a part of the women's practice team. So at Tech, the women's team practices against a group of boys. Did that for 4 years, and that was a great experience for him because it enabled him to keep doing something that he enjoyed, which was playing basketball, but do it in a little different environment and still contribute. And I think the biggest benefit he got was once a year for all the boys on the practice team, they opened up the supply closet and said, go get one of each in there. And that was always his favorite day to do that and grab some shoes and some shorts and those kind of things. And then he also was involved in the marketing association through Rawls. He was a business major and did that, and that was good for him from a networking standpoint and just kind of learning about different job opportunities. My daughter, she, of the 3 of our children, she was the most involved. She was the one who the emails would come out on opportunities, and I think she looked at almost all of them, and she was the one that would get, she did a number of things that she did and maybe did them for half a semester. I think there were a couple that she did for a full semester, and then nope, that wasn't it, and moved on to something else. So one of the things that Preeti said is that it's okay to step back if you think you want to do this and then it's not something that you want to do. Step back from it, find the things that you want to do. So she was involved in a sorority there. She was a member of Kappa Delta, ended up being president of Kappa Delta her senior year, which another thing that Preeti said about those roles and responsibilities. As you continue in the organization, those opportunities for more leadership roles are there in every organization. And I think that's one of the biggest things that our kids got out of being involved in those organizations was some of those leadership opportunities. She was a dean's ambassador in the College of Media and Communication, so had a chance to, kind of recruit new students there as well. And, both of those just, great experiences and taught her things that she was learning in the classroom, but gave her a chance to apply them. And then with our youngest son, he is a media communications major, he's going to be a sports management minor, and has been a part of Raider Vision for the last 4 years now, which if you aren't familiar with that, all of the videos that are shown in game, there's a crew internally that does all of that. Plus now with the relationship that Tech has with ESPN Plus, a number of games, especially now that baseball and softball are coming up that you see, those are student-led broadcasts that you're going to be watching on some of those games. So once again, a chance to take his major and apply it. And then also he was actively involved in his church and some of those organizations through campus. So really just wanted to kind of share, there's just a number of different opportunities, and everybody's got something different. And 3 kids, they all kind of went in different directions, but that key about there's something for everyone. It's going to be different. And then the last thing that I would say is about, I know a number of people, hey, is it too late for my child to get involved? And I think those org fairs, when we all go for orientation or that first day, first week, they've got the org fairs. And I think a lot of students think, okay, well, that's just for the incoming freshmen. And it's not. My youngest son, he went there again before his second year and just kind of reviewed some of the organizations. And that's how he found one of the groups that he got involved with. So, just once again, it's about everything that we do as a parent, just continuing to encourage our students to get involved. Parent family relations are great about showing things. There's ways for you as a parent to go online, see what's there, and maybe just give some gentle suggestions to your child. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has regarding that and our experience there.
Well, thank you very much, Brad, for sharing that information. I think it's always wonderful to hear from a parent and family member perspective on how you can encourage your student to get involved. So we're at the end of our presentation. However, we do still have a little bit of time. I know it is 12:30. I totally understand if you need to go on about your day, but you're welcome to continue to put those questions in the Q&A feature, and we will get those answered for you. So once again, I want to thank our presenters, Preeti and Brad, for joining us today. And I want to thank all of you for joining us for this webinar. We will continue our webinar series throughout the semester. We have another one coming up in March on how your student can get involved specifically with the rec center and some of the opportunities that they have coming up. Know that we have recorded this session, and I'll be emailing you later this afternoon with a link to this recording if you want to review it or even share it with your student. And it's going to be hosted on our website. So if you ever want to refer back to it, you can certainly do that. So thank you so much. Again, please, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get those answered for you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.